Hello, welcome back again, all you loyal fans. This is Eddie Muller. I am here with Ann Hockens, the Director of Communication for the Film Noir Foundation. How are you, Ann?
I'm good. How are you?
Hot. I'm very hot. I don't mean that in a good way or a sexy way or anything. I'm just like burning up here. Once again, I will try to keep my answers not as long-winded as I can usually get because I might end up just a puddle on the floor. But this is another episode of Ask Eddie, and we are going to dive right in this time. No preamble. How about that? To make sure we get as many questions in as we can. So let's roll. Start us off, Ann.
With all the elaborate retro finery that adorns attendees at North City, why not have a costume contest on stage during the intermission? Drinks, screening tickets, or swag would make swell prizes. Carl in San Francisco.
Okay, Carl. So Carl has been to the festival in San Francisco, so he knows how turned out that audience can be. Immediately when I heard that question, I thought, well, Carl, we can't have a vintage costume, and I hate using the word costume, just a outfit competition at intermission, because that's when all the best dressed women are going to the ladies' room. So, so it's not going to work out at the intermission at all. You have to think of these things logistically, right? That's number one. Number two is I don't really like the idea of making it into a competition. I love the fact that people come dressed up just because they want to dress up, and it's not. Most of those people that really do that are deeply into it. So it's not like they're picking up something that they're going to wear for the first time, like it's Halloween or something. They're very, very stylish folks, and so they love having Noir City there so that they can go out in their finery. But we do sort of something like that in that, and I always do a thing at the top of the second show every night where we bring somebody out from the audience and we do a contest, right? Where it's a trivia question or something where we engage with Miss Noir City and this contestant. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that those contestants quite often are selected based on how fabulous they look. So that we can just get them up on stage and show off how great they look. So it's not a prerequisite or anything, but it's pretty obvious that that's the way it works sometimes. So thank you, Carl. I'm glad you appreciate how stylish our audience is, but I shy away from turning it into a competition, especially where the women are concerned, because I don't want one very happy woman and 20 very disgruntled women. I'd rather they all be happy. Oh, me. We're gonna alternate this now. Okay, here we go. Okay, the beginning of this is about the new book, which I appreciate. This gentleman, Andrew in North Carolina, purchased the book through the Larry Edmunds bookstore, as I appreciate. We want to bring Jeff Mantour and all the business he can handle down there. So the question is, how do you convince younger generations to give film noir and older films a chance? It seems that people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and all the content being produced by streaming services makes it a real challenge. As an older millennial, I'm finding that most folks my age or younger are so accustomed to the new style of filmmaking, which is obviously much faster pace and action oriented, that it's a huge hill to climb to convince folks that there are decades of great storytelling they're missing out on. Well, Andrew, this is my job. I mean, this is what I do, right? And it's also what you do, Ann. I mean, we have to keep the interest up, and I think you do it just by. I have been successful doing it because I don't lecture anybody. The idea is to prove that it's fun. I also think that you shouldn't be disgruntled when you realize that styles have changed, attention spans have changed. You're not going to get everybody, and you don't need to try to do that. I mean, I remember I had these guys living next door to me, three youngish men in their 20s and 30s, and they were roommates, and they found out what I did and that I had this festival. And this one guy was maybe 32 years old or something, and he went to the Noir City Festival and said, "I've never seen a black and white movie." And I'm not going to be outraged by that. I'm going to say, well, I'm glad that you decided to come here to see your first black and white movie. And I think that you just I find that you have to try to be inclusive, and I've made lists of films that I think are the best ones to capture young people's attentions. I know on previous episodes I've pointed out how I go into schools and talk about the films and make sure to tell them that their grandparents weren't, or great grandparents now, weren't cornballs. They cared just as much about sex as you do, because look at that's what all these movies are about, right? If you show them The Killers or Crisscross or Double Indemnity or any of these things, that's what the movies are about. And then they get kind of curious when you tell them that you couldn't just show anything one time. So anyway, there's a way to do this, but I find that making it fun and not lecturing or hectoring younger people for not being automatically into it, because it's not their fault. I mean, the times have changed, as this gentleman points out. So anyway, do you have any thoughts on that one, Ann?
I mean, I think there's definitely an interest with, that young people do have, because I'm always amazed when I go to the Turner Classic Movie Film Festival about the amount of young people. And they always, and it's always the pre-code films, especially, that you see these huge crowds for. And, I think it's just something, and I think film noir is more appealing, I think, than other types of classic films, probably also because they're more cynical. Like, I think they're more relatable to a modern audience than maybe things that were more emotional.
Yes, I agree. And I do think that you'll agree with me. I'm almost certain that it's predominantly of the younger crowd is female.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's much easier to convince younger women to watch old movies than it is to convince younger men to watch old movies. But this series I've been doing on TCM, the neo-noir series, has been great because I've taken advantage of that to kind of do this backwards leapfrog thing where I would show To Live and Die in LA, and it's like, that's kind of what Andrew here was talking about. It's much faster paced. It has a real hip, well, if you think Wang Chung is still hip, it has a real score on it. It's got bad language. It's got ultra violence. 5 people get shot in the face in that movie, graphically on camera. But when I introduced it, I said, this is an 80s update of the movie T-Men from 1947, in the hopes that people who may be watching a movie from 1985 and then hear like, wow, you mean there was a movie like this made in 1947, will go back and perhaps watch that movie and then be sort of, hooked by it. So, I mean, there's no easy answer, but I've certainly found out that if you're going after 100 people, if you have an audience of 100 people and you can really capture the attention of 20 to 25 of those people, that's good. That's good. Because you're just not going to get everybody. You're not going to turn them all into lifetime fans overnight. It's just you gotta, there has to be something in them that it connects to. So that's what I have to say about that.
Just rewatched The Natural. Have not seen it in years. A light bulb went off screaming as in I wake up. This is neo-noir. I have never known this movie to be referred to as this before. The baseball scenes are great, but it sure as hell ain't a sports flick. Again, I say neo-noir. Agree, disagree, testify, Eddie. And that's from November Bat.
I'm going to stop short of calling The Natural a neo-noir, although I certainly know what he is talking about. I consider it, and it's funny because I just called Mona Lisa this when I presented it on TCM. The Natural is a grown-up fairy tale. I mean, it takes all the mythology of baseball, and it has that devilish thing. And it's not that far removed from Damn Yankees. It's like a serious drama version of the musical Damn Yankees in some respects. I mean, I really like the film. I get where November Bat is coming from with this, because it and it's also a period film, so it has the look going on as well. But you may see me introduce that movie one day on TCM, but it won't be on Noir Alley. Ben Mankiewicz and I are trying to get the powers that be to let us do a whole month of baseball movies. And if that happens, I can, as long as the rights are in play, I can guarantee you that The Natural will be on that list, and I will point out the noirish elements of it without going so far as to call it a film noir itself. Okay. This is an interesting one. So Phil from San Anselmo, California, Phil wants to know how and where we met each other.
Yeah.
How long have you known one another? That's Phil's question. There's another little part to Phil's question that I'm going to answer to him privately, which is, yes, Phil, I was aware of that. I'm not in her house, but I was aware of that. But I don't want to read the rest of that question online. So how did we meet, Anne? Remind me.
It was at the Seattle International Film Festival. You were presenting two films. I think it was The Window and oh God, the one set in San Francisco.
The man who cheated himself.
The Man Who Cheated Himself. You think I could remember that one?
But that was a long time ago, because that was when The Man Who Cheated Himself, there was an okay print that we were able to get before it was gone, and then we had to actually do a restored version of the film. So, and we also did a preservation of The Window. I think that was the deal. That was the Film Noir Foundation's preservation of The Window that I was presenting at the festival. Yes, I remember that. That was at the Egyptian Theater, was it not?
Yes, it was at the Egyptian.
It was at the Egyptian, which is now the home of Noir City. Back then, I was just doing it with the Seattle International Film Festival, but as part of like the revival track in the film festival itself. But now that's where we have the festival every year. Yes, and then you moved to San Francisco. And
eventually, yeah. Because I came down and covered North City for SIF blog for a couple of years, and then when I moved down here, then about a year after I moved down here, I contacted you, and we started working together then.
Yep, that's how I recall it as well. So, and lo, these many years, it's a good thing, and it has been a very good thing. Okay, you're up.
Let's see. Hi, gang. There's a cliche for some people who when they think of film noir, also think of a seductive tenor sax playing a slow blues. The first time I ever heard such a sax in a noir was in the 1949 film Tension, when Audrey Totter appeared on screen. I'm curious if this was the first appearance in a noir to feature such a sax performance. That's Conrad.
You startled me there. I thought I heard you say the first time it ever featured such a sex performance. Audrey?
It was a close thing in Tension. It was pretty hot to trot.
I have absolutely no idea. But I know that saxophone that accompanies her in Tension is kind of it's almost a self-parody, you know, because she plays that character quite broadly, shall we say.
Yeah.
And she's like the original Jessica Rabbit or something. And but I don't know when that became a thing. You know, the saxophone heralding the arrival of the femme fatale or something. I'm not really sure. I would almost suggest that maybe it's something that originated in like a Warner Brothers cartoon, or I just don't know. It's a good question. I wonder what the first example of it is. It's obviously not in a silent film, although it could be, right? It could be live accompaniment, maybe to a silent film. When Theta Bara came on or something, there may have been a sax theme. Who knows? But you know that it's pretty obvious that that's because jazz has always been associated with, you know, the underworld and sex. So it makes sense that the two would go hand in hand. When Ella Raines gets tarted up in Phantom Lady, do you recall that does she have a theme that goes along with her? You know,
I
when
don't
she
think
makes her
so.
first appearance, it wouldn't have surprised me.
I honestly don't remember. And there's not really that much sax or jazz type music in film noirs. I mean, they were mainly really scored in a more traditional way.
Yes, so that's a good point, and it means that probably in the 40s that was that bit in tension may definitely have been one of the first examples of that, because the sax would have only come by and large, you know, from I guess what they call diegetic use. You know, it has to come from a source within the film, not on the soundtrack itself, or not from the score. I mean, so it's interesting, something to consider. Maybe I don't know how hard I'm going to look for an answer to that, but I'm going to keep. I'll fixate on that from now on. And here's another question that's kind of in the same vein. As a longtime film music fan, I wonder if you think music is important in film noir, and if so, what's a good example of music used in a film noir? And that is from Roger. I've talked about this a few times. Anne, do you have one that's a particular favorite, a score, a noir score, one that you think stands out?
Well, for me, I think the Warner Brother ones tend to stand out, like Mildred Pierce.
Yeah, and was that Max Steiner?
I think so, because I think he did most. I think
He's
he did
most of the
of
Warner Brothers
noirs
ones,
for Warner's.
Yeah, I like we were just saying, the ones that are really memorable to me. I mean, the Miklos Rozsa scores are like in Double Indemnity and The Killers, and are very memorable. Crisscross is another one. I love those. I love Franz Waxman's score for Night in the City. But then when you get into the 50s, you start getting into the sound that people really associate with noir, which is that jazzy, bluesy thing that you start hearing in Man with the Golden Arm and Sweet Smell of Success. And of course, Odds Against Tomorrow is one that I always point out as one of the best scores. And the Miles Davis score for Elevator to the Gallows is, geez, I just talk about that all the time. And now I think that just stands alone, and people are as familiar with the score, they're more familiar with the score than they are with the movie.
Yeah.
At this point, like, people are surprised to find out they're familiar with the music. And when they find out, oh, that's from a French movie from the 50s, oh, who knew? You know, it comes as a surprise to them. But those are some of the ones that I'm most fond of. Okay, your turn.
As a longtime film music fan.
No, I just read that one.
We just did that one. Sorry, I got confused. Kirk Douglas and Bert Lancaster both seem to begin their careers with film noir. It seems that they made several films together. How many films were they in together? Were they friends in real life or just colleagues? And that's Paul from Crescent City, California.
Interesting. That's a good observation, Paul, because yes, they did both begin their careers in film noir. And then because I guess everybody considers The Killers to be Burt Lancaster's introductory film, even though he actually made Desert Fury before he made The Killers, but it wasn't released yet when The Killers was released. And unless I'm mistaken, Strange Love of Martha Ivers was Kirk Douglas's first role, which is pretty good when you debut opposite Barbara Stanwyck in very, very dramatic scenes. That's kind of announcing your arrival. And then, he was great in Out of the Past. They were together, I know, in I Walk Alone in 1947. And I'm not exactly sure how many films they made together. I know they did I Walk Alone, and they did Gunfight at the OK Corral, and they did 7 Days in May. There's another one in there. Oh, The Devil's Disciple, the Civil War movie, the Revolutionary War movie. There's one they did when they were much older called Tough Guys.
Yeah.
That wanted to be like Atlantic City, but it wasn't. It was not that good. So I guess that's 5 or 6, and I know they were both in. I know they were both in the list of Adrian Messenger, but that's a goof. That's not really, because have you seen that movie, The List of Adrian Messenger? Where everybody's in makeup.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that doesn't really count. That was a gag movie. That was a joke movie. I mean, it's good film, but I don't count that as a portrayal or anything, or that they co-starred in it. Yeah. And as for whether they were friends or not, I don't know. Was anybody friends with Burt Lancaster? I don't mean that to be flippant, but he was kind of a tough guy to get along with. And I know there were stories about how he would antagonize Kirk Douglas throughout his career, but I've also heard that they were, they remained good friends. I mean, they made a movie together when they were much older, and I doubt they would have agreed to it if they didn't like each other. But I also know that as guys get older, they tend to bury the hatchet and say, we were always great pals, even if they hated each other for years. I'm sure they would come around to say, we've loved each other from the beginning, which is kind of how I sense it was with them, but I don't know that. Don't quote me on that, because I'm really not sure. Okay. Anne in Claremont, California she says, Eddie has discussed gentlemen's fedoras in film noir. So for an important female status symbol of the past, what are the best and worst fur coats in noir? And she has her nominees, okay? Although this first one is not from a film noir. The best is the coat scene with Marilyn Monroe on the staircase in All About Eve, Russian Sable. And the worst is a tie between Annie Laurie Starr, the fur coat she drops on the ground when she's running away in Gun Crazy. And yes, I have to agree. The one that Googie Withers has, that Nosseros gives her in Night in the City, supposed to be a silver fox, but as Anne says here, it looks like it was made from rats. So Anne, do you have a fur coat? A favorite fur coat? As an animal lover, I'm not big on the fur coats, but
yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, honestly, the best one I've ever seen is well, it's not a film noir. Let me think of one that's in a film noir. I mean, I think just for me, it's probably The Big Heat and Gloria Graham, but that that's also partly because of this
Touchdown.
Yeah.
That's Great Minds Think Alike, because that was the first one that came to my mind, because it's also tied into a great line of dialogue,
Right, exactly.
Who's under the mink, and then she pulls out a gun and she blows her away, I mean, there's a full page photograph of that in my Dark City book. And when I was doing the revised edition, I was thrilled to find another copy of that photograph that is slightly different than the one I ran in the first edition of the book. That Gloria Graham has a slightly different expression on her face, and the gun smoke from her little 38 is different. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I can use the same picture again, but it's actually a different picture. She's dolled up in that fur coat, and that's without doubt, that's the best fur coat in film noir. And then it's also great. Think about it, Anne, because she's wearing it at the end, and she uses it to cover the ruined side of her face. She puts the mink over it. So how can there be a better mink coat than one worn by Gloria Graham in noir? Wow. Okay. Good question, Anne. Not you, Anne. Anne from Claremont, California.
And there's also the unseen fox fur mentioned in Laura.
Oh, yeah. A dame in Washington Heights once got a fox fur out of me.
So I assume that wasn't a grave fur.
Yeah. Well, he didn't want to pay for anything, but she got it out of him. But yeah. That's where my mother used to have those weird like stoles that like had the little fox head, and it had a clamp for its mouth, and it'd hold on by that clamp. It's like, that's disgusting. It was like gross. I remember when my mom would wear that, I would just go, ugh. It's like wearing your dog around your neck or something, and okay, never mind. Moving on. You're up, Ben.
Okay. I would appreciate any comments you might have on the movie Saint Jack. I don't know where the film sits as noir, but I absolutely love the performance of Ben Gazzara as the American expatriate in Singapore. The way he moves through his sordid world with an easy charm and a genuine tolerance of the desperate people he encounters is irresistible. And his relationship with Denham Elliott's character is unexpectedly touching. And that's from Daryl, in Ann Arbor.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on St. Jack, Anne?
I've actually never seen St. Jack.
Oh, okay. Well, you have that one to look forward to.
Yeah.
I do like the movie. It's odd. I mean, it's a Paul Theroux novel, and Gazzara is fantastic in it. It was kind of made in that period where filmmakers were realizing that he was like this treasure, and he'd never gotten really great roles as a full-grown actor. I mean, he was in some pretty good stuff, Anatomy of a Murder and The Strange One and stuff like that in the 50s, but he hadn't gotten really great roles. So, Bogdanovich puts him in St. Jack, and Cassavetes let him loose in Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and in Husbands and all. He was part of that Cassavetes group. But I do like the movie very much. I never think of it in terms of noir. And it's odd because it's such an odd film out on the Peter Bogdanovich filmography, because it's not made like any other film that he had gotten kind of pigeonholed as the guy who recreated John Ford and Howard Hawks and Screwball. He recreated old Hollywood, and then St. Jack was kind of its own thing, where he kind of did his own thing as a filmmaker, and it wasn't like he was imitating anybody. So it's good. I like that film, and I have always liked Ben Gazzara as an actor. I think he's just terrific. I remember fondly Run for Your Life, the TV series that he did. That was noir. That was pretty noir. Okay. Oh, I like this. Hello, Eddie and lovely Anne.
Nice.
Okay, there's two questions here regarding James Cagney, who is part of the TCM Summer Under the Stars Festival beginning now. And okay, the first question here, I'm going to paraphrase, is Jonathan in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, wants to know why he never sees Angels with Dirty Faces anywhere. And he points out that I'm sure it's a rights issue. Yes. Why is the movie so hard to find? And do you think the situation might change? I'm not entirely sure of exactly what the situation is, but there is a rights issue with that movie that keeps it from being seen of late. I wish I could tell you specifically what it is, but I don't know. I should actually contact my Charlie Tabish at TCM and ask him, because he would certainly know. So maybe I'll do that, and then on a future episode of Ask Eddie, I'll have a real answer for you.
Yeah, because I didn't know if it was because it is based on a play, right?
Well, it's based on a lot of things. So
Right.
I suspect that actual ownership of the underlying rights is one of the questions, because there's a play, but then there's the contributions of all kinds of different people who brought things to the script. I know that Roland Brown was part of that. And who knows, once that ABEN decision kicked in, which I won't go into right now, and you had to clear all the underlying literary rights again to renew the copyright on the film, I have a sneaking suspicion that things got very tangled at that point. And so Angels with Dirty Faces has become like Rogue Cop and, a number of other movies that are just kind of in rights limbo, which is unfortunate, because it's really a great film. And there's a second question. If you have a chance to review the Summer Under the Stars lineup, could you let us know if there are any noirs we should definitely catch, especially ones not frequently shown? And I'm going to leave that up to you, because even though I'm the one who works for TCM, I don't even know the full Summer Under the Stars lineup. But because you track all the noir stuff for the Film Noir Foundation and put it on the website, maybe you can just lead people to that so they can find those.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest to people is just go to filmnoirfoundation.org. If you go to the news page, there's a TV listings page, or you could just type in your browser Film Noir Foundation TV listings page. And we go through, or I go through the schedule each month at GCM and box up and, put together the noirs. And with some of those, it's sort of nice, because I guess the thing I would recommend most is The Unfaithful, because, as you know, it is one of my favorite film noirs, which I just, love so much and highly, highly recommend, because that will be playing. And that was actually, I believe, it's sort of like, it was a screenplay by David Goodis. I think it was the only thing he wrote as an original story for a film, as opposed to stuff of his that was adapted.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And it's obviously, it's a reworking
Of the letter. Yeah.
of the letter. Yeah. And it's just really well done. And I think it's the most grown-up film I've ever seen about adultery, where it's really handled in a really adult way, and the real impacts and the real conversations that needed to go around there. And, I'm sure that a lot of people in the audience in post-war America probably experienced infidelity during the war, which is what it really becomes about, even though it's framed around this murder mystery.
Interesting. That's funny. If you had one wish, people always say that, if you could do this or be a fly on the wall, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to go back and hear what the audiences at the time said about these movies?
Yeah.
I would love to hear like an audience leaving The Unfaithful talking about that, like, or in some cases not talking about it because it was perhaps a little close to the bone, but that would be kind of fascinating. And like, were there films that we take seriously that they didn't take seriously at all back then, or did they laugh in the same places that we laugh now in these movies? Right. I'd be so fascinated by that, because it always perplexes me when people complain to me at Noir City that why are they laughing at the movie? And I say, because it's funny. right? As though it couldn't possibly have been funny to an audience back in the 1940s. Because why? Because they didn't have a sense of humor then or something? I mean, a lot of this stuff is funny. I'm sure there's stuff in Double Indemnity that people were laughing at. They laughed at the, all the dialogue and everything back then. I'm positive, but because so much writing about noir is so serious, people take it seriously and like, don't laugh at it. This is America losing its innocence, and they're exploring the dark part of our psyche. And it's like, all that's true, but that doesn't automatically mean it can't also have a sense of humor to it. The two things can coexist. So anyway,
Well,
that was a sidetrack there. Like I said, I was going to not be long-winded tonight, so I just thought I'd detour into an entirely different subject.
well, what I was going to say in response to that, though, is my dad told me about the time when he saw Niagara in the theater when it came out. And he said the audiences were laughing their asses off, that it was like, it was just, and he said it was a pretty young audience, but they were just like laughing at the melodrama of it all.
It's pretty hard not to, the act 3 of that movie it gets a little out of control.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were parts of that movie they weren't laughing at, but yeah, when Joseph Cotton completely loses it, things get a little wild. Okay. Oh no, your turn now.
This is my turn. And this is from Ed. How do you distinguish between Hitchcock films that are classic noir and those that might be considered suspense stories that do not fit neatly into the noir umbrella? For example, Strangers on a Train seems to have noirish elements, as does Notorious and The Wrong Man, but is Rebecca noir? Same with Rear Window, Shadow of a Doubt.
I want to direct Ed to my Dark City book, where there's a whole section on Alfred Hitchcock and this very discussion, like when is Hitchcock noir and when isn't he noir? But in a nutshell, I would say that for me, it has a lot to do with the protagonists and the guilt of the protagonist. So a lot of these are suspense movies where they're just wrong place at the wrong time stories, that are very suspenseful, like The Man Who Knew Too Much or something. It's like, imagine if you were an American tourist and you stumbled into the middle of this incredible plot, but there's nothing about the protagonist that is inherently noirish, right? But then when you get to stuff like Shadow of a Doubt, Strangers on a Train, I Confess, I would throw in there. The Wrong Man is a very noirish film to me. Vertigo is a very noirish film to me. Psycho is very, very noir because Janet Leigh is this classic guilty character. The whole film starts like a film noir and then veers off into this horrific other genre. But that's sort of the way I look at it. To Catch a Thief is not remotely noir. I don't consider North by Northwest to be a film noir. But these ones with a protagonist that has this moral complexity, and Notorious fits in there as well, because Cary Grant is not a particularly good guy in that movie. And the whole predicament in that film has a very noirish quality to it, with the triangle with Claude Rains and Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant. But so that in a nutshell is the way I kind of distinguish them. It's sort of like, I think Hitchcock was sort of like, when Graham Greene did his novels, and he had his serious novels and then his entertainments that he thought, don't take these too seriously. I think the same is kind of true of Hitchcock. There were the movies he made that he was revealing something serious about himself. And then there are the movies where he's just having fun and playing around with the audience, playing around with cinema. And I kind of think that the more noirish films fall into that former category, where Hitchcock is actually telling you something about himself and the guilt that he felt, I think, about a lot of things. That was way too serious an answer. Okay. Here's a question from Richard in New York, New York. Oh, it's funny. It relates to a film we just talked about. I have a question about a Marilyn Monroe film as to whether you and Eddie would regard it as noir. Would you consider the 1953 film Niagara, directed by Henry Hathaway, as noir? Fortunately, he also includes a PS in here about Gaslight. Would we consider Gaslight to be noir? Ingrid Bergman again. So I absolutely 100% feel Niagara is a film noir. And anybody who doesn't agree with me, I say, well, then when you're watching on TV, just turn off the color and then tell me that it isn't a film noir, right? I mean, I think people just get distracted by the color. But if you drain out all the color, that movie is totally a film noir. Okay?
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. I've always considered a film noir, and I think especially with well, I mean, she's plotting to kill her husband with her lover, and
the postman always rings twice.
Yeah, he's a vet with mental health problems. I mean, I don't know how you get more noir than that.
So exactly. So you get the twofer. You get the postman always rings twice angle with the spouses trying to kill each other, and then you get the returning, mentally unstable, returning World War II veteran. You get that in the bargain. So it's like, how can you not say this is film noir? Because they decided to shoot Marilyn in full color, baby.
Yeah.
One of the eighth wonder of the world, or however they build it, when they put her on the posters. And Gaslight, I have no problem considering Gaslight a film noir. And I've kind of changed my mind about that over the years, partly because early on, I succumbed to the same idiot mentality that a lot of film scholars did, which was, oh, if a woman is the protagonist, then it isn't really a film noir. And it's like, I mean, how is it not a noir when somebody is trying to drive you crazy, and it's the person that is closest to you in the world? That's pretty freaking noir, But they find every way, a lot of writers find any way possible to discredit those as being film noir, because they're melodramas or women's pictures or period films or whatever the hell else you want to call them. But yes, I have no problem considering Gaslight a noir as well.
I mean, I consider it a noir as well. And I think it's just, I just think it's sexism, frankly, that
Pretty
anything
much.
that stars, if the woman's a protagonist, is not noir. There's just not, it's, yeah, that's it.
That's pretty true. That's pretty true, because explain to me how you can have a cinematic movement that swept over all of Hollywood, all the writers, all the directors, all the cameramen, everybody involved in this, created an artistic movement, but we'll just selectively pick out the ones that had female leads and remove them because they can't possibly qualify as film noir, because we've decided that film noir is all about masculinity or something, and it doesn't say anything really good about masculinity, right? But I just don't understand how that could be possible. How you could have Robert Mitchum and Humphrey Bogart as noir icons, but then not consider Barbara Stanwyck and Joan Crawford to be the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean, The Strange Love of Martha Ivers, The Damned Don't Cry, Sudden Fear, Sorry Wrong Number, all these films are completely noir. So anyway, I'll get off my horse now on that subject, but I just got really tired of that a long time ago.
It's me.
Oh, it's you. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a longtime student of the writing of Theodore Dreiser. My U of Pennsylvania PhD dissertation and first published book was on Dreiser. My introduction to Dreiser came when I saw A Place in the Sun for the first time as a teenager. The movie blew me away. It has a very flawed, though sympathetic, central protagonist who is driven by deterministic circumstances to commit a terrible crime. A rather twisted interpretation might view the two women in the film as femme fatales, who in each of their own ways lead Cliff to his inevitable doom. The ending is just about as tragic as any of the films of that genre. I wonder, Eddie, if a case could not be made for considering A Place in the Sun as an overlooked noir. If not, why not? And that's Lou, a recent member. Thank you, Lou, for joining up with us.
Thanks for signing up, Lou, and congratulations on the book. I will actually look for that. We have shown A Place in the Sun as part of our noir festivals because I have no problem considering it part of the whole film noir thing, even though I understand why it's overlooked in that regard. Because the vast majority of the movies that were made in the noir era were not George Stevens productions made at Paramount with Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift, and they were selling that movie in an entirely different way. Although when you really stop to think about it, was it that different than the way MGM sold The Postman Always Rings Twice with John Garfield and Lana Turner? I mean, it's obviously The Postman Always Rings Twice is more of a straight ahead, the protagonists are criminals, whereas in A Place in the Sun, it's something else that's at work, something a little deeper in the American psyche, if you will. But I have absolutely no problem thinking of A Place in the Sun as a film noir.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I really took exception to in this is just talking about the two women and it being femme fatales, because
Alice doesn't strike me. Neither of them actually strike me as femme fatales. I mean, it's sort of, it goes back to what I was just saying about people who write about noir thinking it's all about the male psyche, right? And it's like Montgomery Clift destroys himself. He destroys himself in this story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point.
Yeah.
He can't do the right thing. He can't figure out, Liz Taylor, that she's just there. She's Liz Taylor, and what guy wouldn't be totally smitten and everything, but it's an American tragedy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think in it, just the class issues that are more underlying or hidden in a lot of film noir are just right at the top of it in a way that you don't see in the other ones. But I definitely see, like, a lot of the noirs, there's some real class issues going on, but that one, of course, is much more straight ahead with it.
Yes, absolutely. And that femme fatale character in noir does exhibit a lot of those class issues are apparent in that character because she's a woman from the wrong side of the tracks who will do anything to rise in her social standing. So that character, who in some ways is as tragic as the men that she's supposedly leading to their demise. Not that I've seen a single male character in noir who didn't do that willingly. It's so yeah, those issues are definitely there. Not just in A Place in the Sun or American Tragedy, but they're there in a lot of noir films. Okay. What are some of the titles Eddie, that would be me, would have liked to include in the neo-noir series on TCM, but was unable to obtain for whatever reason? I'll be quick with this because I don't like to talk about my programming decisions too much, especially when this is really a Film Noir Foundation thing and not a TCM thing. And Michael from Post Falls, Idaho, also asked if I would consider showing The Conversation should the opportunity arise in the future. I sure hope so. I think there might be something coming up with the director of that movie on TCM, and I'm hoping that The Conversation is part of that. I wanted to include, I'll just throw out a few random titles here. I wanted to include One False Move, Carl Franklin's One False Move, and I also wanted to show Devil in a Blue Dress, but we couldn't manage the rights. They were out of window for the time that we were doing the neo-noir series, but my hope is that I'll still be able to show those sometime, either as part of another neo-noir series, or maybe when we can do something and have Carl Franklin as a guest programmer and show one or both of those movies. I also wanted to show The Driver, Walter Hill's The Driver, but that didn't work out. And there was something else that I was thinking of that didn't come off. But there are three, and I obviously would have shown The Conversation, but I was given a heads up that we're probably doing something with Coppola down the road, so maybe it's good to not do The Conversation right now. Okay.
I think Charles McGraw may be the quintessential noir tough guy. As soon as he opened his mouth, that voice. He was also one of the highlights of the early scenes of Spartacus. What are your thoughts about Charles?
How can you not love Charles McGraw? I mean, he's great. For a guy who never really got leading roles. Okay, Narrow Margin, Roadblock, Armored Car Robbery. He's such an icon of film noir. And all I'll say is, if you haven't read Alan Rohde's book, Charles McGraw, Film Noir Tough Guy, do yourself a favor. Make sure you get a copy of that, because it's everything you wanted to know about Charlie, as Alan calls him, Charlie. I guess when you write a book about somebody's life, you feel like you know them, and it's like they become Charlie to you. But he's just the greatest, And I guess my all-time favorite McGraw line is from Armored Car Robbery, when he goes to visit the wife of his recently killed partner, and you can just see he's building up to some big commiseration thing, and he just goes, "Tough break, Marcia," and walks away. That's it. And it's like that's quintessential Charles McGraw,
What's the movie where he's the guy that gets out of prison and he's like tracking down the people that put him there, and they all wind up like,
oh God, yes, The Threat.
The Threat, yeah.
Yeah. Where that movie is he is so scary in that film, especially opposite Virginia Gray,
who's incredible in it.
She's fantastic, because she plays the same scene over and over and over again in that movie, where she's just begging him to not kill everybody. It's like, now do that one again. Virginia, now cue Virginia. She's going to play the same scene again, but she's spectacular in it, but she's so freaking skinny that every time McGraw grabs her by the arm, I actually think he's like going to pull her arm out of the socket or something, or he's just going to break her in half, because she seems bird-like, doesn't even convey how fragile she looks in that movie. It's beautiful. She's so beautiful, but she is so fragile in that film.
Yeah, and especially right.
Yeah,
especially being opposite of him. Sorry.
Oh yeah, but Farron Smith Nemi wrote a great profile of Virginia Gray that's in the latest issue of the Noir City magazine. That I learned some stuff about her that I did not know in that article, and it was really good. So people should buy that if they haven't already. And they can get a print edition now as well.
Yes, they can. So you can either buy print edition on Amazon, or you can actually get the digital version of Noir City magazine for a year if you contribute $20 or more to the Film Noir Foundation and sign up on our email subscriber list. And if you sign up on our email subscriber list, then in the newsletter, I solicit questions from you for Ask Eddie. So then you can get your questions answered.
Very good.
Sign up.
I was reaching forward because I was trying to change the lighting setup on my ring light here because it looks like I have the world's worst sunburn,
Yeah.
and I really don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I feel fine, but but you look so fair, and I'm here like I'm just a lobster or something. So I was thinking maybe I can change the setting on the light, but that's not going to work because I'm going to knock everything over if I try to do that. Okay, so Jessica says, I know Kiss Me Deadly has nuclear elements. Nudge, nudge. Are there any other noirs with nuclear references? Whether they're classic or neo-noir. I don't know that neo-noir has many references to, potential Armageddon as there were back in the old days when it was like a new thing. You have any particular favorites besides Kiss Me Deadly, where the whole the relatively new thing about potential annihilation in the blink of an eye is like actually worked into the movie?
This is not a film noir or a neo noir, but I immediately thought of Matinee, which
Okay.
is a wonderful, wonderful film that's based heavily on William Castle, with John Goodman playing the William Castle type role, and it's set around, I guess, it's a Cuban Missile Crisis, and that plays a big role in it. So that's just the first thing that popped in my head.
Right, and of course, not a noir, but On the Beach is certainly
Yeah.
a movie that deals with that. But amongst things that I would consider to be noir, one of my favorites is Split Second, directed by Dick Powell, which is the premise has been used now a million times, but it was kind of fresh in 1952, where these crooks take hostages and they're hiding out in the desert, and they don't realize that they're hiding on a nuclear testing site.
Yeah.
And yes, and just what you fear is going to happens at the end of the movie. So that one's pretty good. And there's a lot of other. We did an article. Again, we get all of this stuff into the magazine because I think Jason Ney wrote a really great article about atomic noir and cited all of the examples of the movies that use this as a backdrop. Whether it's Stealing the Secrets or the actual the test stuff like in Split Second. I think Atomic City is another movie that touches on this stuff. Again, I wouldn't really call that a flat out noir, but it's certainly an artifact of its time.
Yeah, and all our back issues are available of the North City magazine. People may not realize that. So if you go to filmnoirfoundation.org on our North City magazine page, there's a link to where you can buy all the back issues. So that's always a good resource. I know, because we mention things all the time. Oh, someone wrote an article about this.
Yeah, it's funny how often that questions pop up, and it's like, wow, we must have done that. Atomic Noir story has to be 3 or 4 years old now.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Your turn.
My turn. Dear Eddie and Ann and Kitties at Large. So this is a twofer, and it's from Tyler. When a film shows a newspaper with the intent of focusing on the headline or certain story, the rest of the paper would still have articles. What is the source of these additional articles? Would they be written for the movies, or would they come from somewhere else? Would there ever have been any jokes inside?
Yes, I wish I had some right at hand that I could point out, but I've seen some of these movies now so many times that the minute they go to the newspaper shot, my eye drifts to the edge of the frame to try to read the extra stories, and are they real or are they phony or whatever. But I'm sure, that's just something that the art department handled, would knock those out like nothing. They had, I wonder how old Tyler is. If Tyler knows that you used to paste up, There used to be actually, they would, in the composing room of the old newspaper, they'd do it with actual lead forms, where you had to set type that was actually metal. It was called hot metal, and they would melt it down and then recast it and then do the whole thing again, and every single day. And then they'd have typesetting machines that would spew out this stuff, and it would all be cut and pasted onto the mechanical forms that would make the page of the newspaper. So I'm sure that, the art departments just had all these stories sitting around to repaste up on these dummy newspapers. But I do want to share this with you, Anne, and all you wonderful viewers. I did a promo for TCM a year or so ago that was about newspapers. We kind of did this whole thing, like all the noir that doesn't fit, or all the noir that's fit to something or other. And part of that, we made up a dummy newspaper, just like in the old films. And this was the Dark City Examiner, right? And this is exactly what Tyler is talking about. I mean, this entire newspaper is, every one of these stories is from a recognizable film noir, right? I mean, we put all these heads on here, but all of this dummy copy is actually the plot synopses of recognizable noir films. So it's kind of funny because, and it's on the back here too, I loved all this, right? Right. The shifty tire shop. But I absolutely, so there was a company that would actually do this now. You can actually get a dummy newspaper made up. I mean, the inside is pretty boilerplate, but you just tell them how many columns do you want across here? Do you want photographs? All this. But this was just so they could do quick shots of me like reading the paper, and see all this stuff on the front. But it's pretty funny. I bet you it'd make a great game show. Maybe we'll do this sometime on Ask Eddie, because all I'd have to do is like read, it'd be like Name That Tune, where you start reading the plot and like how fast can you name this movie? Here's the first one, Ann. I'm going to quiz you. Okay, here we go. Chief of Police under pressure. Here's the first paragraph of this story. Brub Nikolai, a policeman and Dix's former army buddy, takes Dix to the police station where he learns Mildred has been brutally murdered.
That's In a Lonely Place.
That's In a Lonely Place. You got it. First time out of the gate. Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty funny. Because it was just for the visuals, I'm giving full. I want to cite the woman who did all this. Her name. She's a wonderful person, but she has the unfortunate name Lindsey Graham. And Lindsay did a fabulous job putting that together, and she could have just used standard, what they call in the business, Greek, where it doesn't even form words. It's just things that look like it as placeholders. But she went to the trouble of pulling all this information and putting it all in so that the whole thing was noir, start to finish. So that's a great souvenir. When I did that promo, I said, that's great, but I'm keeping that newspaper. That's okay.
Okay, so the second question. When you interview an actor or other celebrity, what do you do to prepare for the interview?
I go to the men's room. I make sure I've used the men's room before the interview starts.
It's important.
It's very important. I mean, yeah, you don't want to have to excuse yourself or get antsy because you have to use the men's room. There's nothing special about that. It's nothing I do different than what I did when I was just a journalist or a reporter. Same thing. You just prep. You do proper preparation. You know what. I will say this. The one thing I do that I notice is different than what some people do is I don't go in with a big, long list of questions.
Uh-huh.
And everything is tailored to the situation. So if I'm doing an interview for a book, let's say like the 6 actresses I interviewed for Dark City Dames, that is totally different than if I'm doing an interview at the TCM Classic Film Festival, or I'm doing an interview at the Noir City Festival, where you know it's going to be, is this a pre-movie 10 or 15 minute interview? Is this a post-movie 30-minute interview? It all depends, and your approach changes depending on how much time is allotted. So you always know, if it's short, go in with 3 really dynamite questions that you want to ask. But the most important thing is to listen to what people say, and don't just be waiting to get to your next question.
Yeah.
Because I find always that the best questions come out of listening to what the people say and being engaged in saying, well, if that's the case, then how would you apply that to this other movie you made? Then it just takes care of itself. And then they open up because they know they're being listened to. Instead of just, I'm asking this question, and then they answer it, and then you're like, oh, okay. Now here's my next question that has nothing to do with what you just said, and I'm barely even acknowledging that you said it. So that's it. I mean, there's nothing really super special about it. I may have said this before, but I mean, I am rarely starstruck by anybody. You know, I mean, I might be antsy because it's somebody I've always wanted to talk to, or somebody that I've always really enjoyed their work. And so I'll be a little amped up, and I try to work, to not be like that. But I'm never intimidated by any of these people. So, here's a question coming up that I'm supposed to read that I've kind of already answered. This is from William McNeil, who's been enjoying the neo-noir films on TCM, and he wanted to know opinion of The Driver, with Ryan O'Neal and Bruce Dern and Isabelle Adjani, I'll add, and Night of the Juggler with James Brolin. Have you seen Night of the Juggler with James Brolin?
I don't think so.
I have not. I haven't seen it, so I can't offer an opinion on that. My opinion of The Driver is I wanted to show it. I mean, it's terrific. I really like Walter Hill movies. You know, they're fantastic, and that one was famous or infamous for its lack of dialogue. That it was almost all action driven, and professional cops and crooks who are so taciturn that they barely speak. Anyway, I like the film, and I did want to show it. So that's my answer.
Okay. In the mid-50s, John Payne took an interest in Bond and attempted to get the film rights to Ian Fleming's Moonraker novel. Apparently, he also tried to get the rights to other Fleming books, and the project never came to fruition. I tend to believe a John Payne James Bond in the 1950s would have been a noir Bond. I found a handful of these early novels quite noirish. What are your thoughts of Bond noir in the 50s? This element of film history could have been quite different.
Yes, I was aware of that, and I would say that if you want to know what it would look like, find a copy of the film Hidden Fear, which is John Payne kind of doing a Bond thing with Andre de Toth kind of helping him out as a director. It's not a great film, but it's an interesting, that's exactly what it is. He couldn't get the rights to do Bond, so they just made up their own Bond film. But I will say this, because I'm working on a project now that kind of peripherally involves Ian Fleming and the whole James Bond thing. And it's very, very British. I mean, James Bond is very British. The whole concept of it, the whole reason it existed. I mean, Fleming's background and the whole psych ops stuff in Britain, and and Fleming's role in all of that, in trying to create, this mythic character that would capture the West's imagination in the fight against the communist encroachment and all that. All that stuff is very significant. And I don't think John Payne had any interest in that part of it at all. So I think he would have, it was just, this is a macho spy guy, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad that didn't happen
Huh.
because I don't think he would have had the right approach to it. But that's it. But watch Hidden Fear and you'll see what it could have looked like. Where am I now? I know it's my turn to read and I'm all out of sorts here. Okay, okay, this is the big one. We're kind of at the end here of this episode. So here's the deal. We don't want to be dismissive of this, and we are going to pay attention to it. But Judy Edelhoff from Washington, D.C. sent in a question that was actually a novella. And I haven't done an exact word count, but I think Judy's question may have more words in it than The Postman Always Rings Twice. This and Judy doesn't. I mean, it's like she packs it in here. There's multiple questions and multiple ideas, and I loved reading this, but there's no way we can answer all this stuff. So Judy, what we're going to do is we're going to cherry pick and put your questions in every upcoming episode of Ask Eddie and Ann. So you need not think of too many more because you're covered here for a while. So, but a couple of things I will address. She asked about early silent films that might be considered noir. And this is, I think I may have mentioned some of these on previous episodes. But, you know, I'm involved with the San Francisco Silent Film Festival and have been presenting films there with them, you know, for years now. And they always send me stuff like, do you know about this film? Because they say, this is kind of noir, you know, maybe you want to present it. So I've come across a lot of great stuff there, like A Cottage on Dartmoor by Anthony Asquith that is definitely an early noir film. Murnau's Sunrise I've always considered to be a noir film. Those von Sternberg movies, you know, Underworld, of course, and Thunderbolt. And The Docks of New York, even though it really doesn't qualify to me as a noir because there's no real crime in it, is a film that it's my favorite Joseph von Sternberg film. And it's just fantastic. We've shown, you know, like Dragnet Girl, the early Ozu film that's just brilliant. Policeman was a Japanese silent film that I showed that was really, really good. Gosh, I'm trying to think. There have been so many over the years. Gosh, I know there's one great one that I'm missing that I really there's one that is absolutely sensational called Tonka of the Gallows. Did you see that in San Francisco? Tonka of the Gallows?
You know, I remember writing about it because we put it up on the news page because you were presenting it, but I can't remember if I actually saw it or not. Was that the year? Oh, I think that was the year that I had to go to Texas for my brother's wedding.
Okay.
So I only got to
never find that. It's kind of been revived lately and rediscovered, and it's absolutely fantastic. It ties in with what we were talking about earlier. Like, it has a female protagonist, so ergo it can't be noir, but it's a spectacular movie. I don't even want to give away the plot. Just Tonka, like the Tonka trucks, Tonka of the Gallows. And you talk about a plot that's predicated on the idea that no good deed goes unpunished. This is the movie, right? It's spectacular. I love that film dearly. So that's the one I want to leave people with. Yeah, it's about I'll just say the premise is it's about a woman who, the only woman in this, the police come because this guy is going to be executed. And as his last wish, he wants to spend the night with a woman. And of course, no woman wants to do it, but this one woman who says, I will do it, because she just has a good soul. She's a fallen woman, but it's like she's going to grant this guy's last request. And nothing goes well. Nothing goes well. But it's a gut-wrenching movie. Anyway, and then at the end of Judy's letter, she very kindly makes numerous suggestions about what we can do to at Noir City festivals to engage the audience. And I just want to say to Judy, come to San Francisco. When we start up again in San Francisco, probably late January 2022, please come, because this is what we do. All the suggestions you make here about having it be more of a fraternal thing and giving time for people to mingle and all that is what we do in San Francisco, and we try to do it elsewhere, but it which is why we pick our venues very judiciously, because we want to have the opportunity to do that. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes the venues are very small and there isn't a lot of space to gather. But then in other times, like the Egyptian in Seattle, it's a little more manageable. And you can really get that vibe that Judy is talking about, where there's like live music and there's, booze, and you can kind of find your tribe, so to speak. But that was the entire basis of the festival in San Francisco, which we've been doing for many years now. And, looking forward to getting back to it once this whole COVID mess is solved. So thank you very much for all your notes, Judy. You're dead on about everything. You just didn't know that's how we roll in San Francisco.
I just wanted to go back a little bit to the whole thing about silent film noirs, because that is actually a regular feature in Noir City magazine. We've covered quite a few different silent films, and it's always one of my favorite things that we do in the magazine.
Yes, it's I'm hoping that I get to do something with Jacqueline Stewart on TCM one of these days, where we do like a crossover between Silent Sunday Nights and Noir Alley, so that we can talk about how, you're coloring way outside the lines here, because people don't think that noir existed before 1941 or something. But there are so many great films that are the progenitors of the form that it's really nice to showcase those. Okay, so we brought that one in for a landing, and that was terrific. A lot of really good questions, and keep them coming. I think everybody has probably noted already very early on that we both have a different setup this time. You've kind of turned like a quarter on the clock face. I can tell you're normally sitting over there on that purple cushion and Charlotte has not moved. The entire show, Charlotte has not moved. You might want to check for a pulse, and she has not moved. It could just be doing that cat thing. But I just decided to do a 180 and show what's normally in front of me when I'm looking at my laptop. Now it's my background. So there you go.
I like it because you can see your barroom, not classroom sign.
My barroom, not classroom sign, which does exist. I didn't just make that up. And yes, my Italian poster for Tomorrow Is Another Day. And those over here are all my collection of film festival passes Those are not all the film festivals I've been to, but that's like the last 10 or 12 years worth of festival passes all hanging there.
Uh,
So there you have it.
all right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that was great fun, Ann. I appreciate it. And keep it coming, folks.
yeah.
It really is amazing how supportive people are of this and how engaged. And it's great fun. So
And I want to say a quick thank you just to everybody that when we're streaming on Facebook that makes comments on Facebook while we're recording, because I sit in on that every week and it's really fun. So thank you.
Charlotte just decided to change positions after all that time. Oh, see, she wanted her close up. Now she's looking at the camera now. Hi, Charlotte. How are you? And who knows? Maybe one of these nights I will drop in on that feed as well to see what people are saying. I tend to stay off the internet as much as possible, but I might make an exception one of these days.
Oh, yeah, we have a good time.
Indeed. Okay, Ann, you're fantastic, and we will see you next time.
We'll see you next time.